All right, guys. So this is the next step in linear and exponentials. All right, this is going to be the same type of patterns that we saw before. We're still going to have to create equations for the linears, equation or for the linear patterns, and then we're also going to have to create equations for the exponential. So remember, we're going to still use these same equations, the mx plus b and the ab to the x. Okay, so remember for the linears, and we're going to use this time, we're going to use f of x instead of the a of n. We can always change this up and use different lettering. It just depends on how you want to title it. And let's say you're doing it for tiles, you can use T. If you're using it for speed, you can use S, or velocity, you can use V. All right, so f of x equals mx plus b. Okay, so that's going to be for our linear. Remember that the m stands for our pattern, and that the b stands for the starting point. Okay, and then for the exponentials, we're going to use f of x equals a times b raised to the power of x. It's going to be an exponent. Now remember with this one, it's switched around. The a is where we start, and then the b is our pattern. And then that's a pattern of what are we multiplying, okay? All right, so if we're looking at this one, what's the pattern? As we go from 3 to 6 to 12 to 24, we're multiplying, okay? That's a multiplication pattern. So we're multiplying 2 every time. Every time we multiply 2. And then where do we start? Well, we always look for where x equals 0. So we're starting at 3. Okay, what type is this? All right, the type that we're going to use is, we have a few different ways of saying that. We have arithmetic and geometric. Add, subtract is arithmetic. Geometric is multiply, divide. But we're going to continue to use the linear and exponential terminology. So remember, add, subtract is linear. Multiply, divide is exponential. Okay, so we're just going to put exp here for exponential. The equation is going to be this one now, the a times b to the x. So we start with f of x equals your a, remember, is going to be your start. So we're starting at 3. And then what are you multiplying? We're multiplying 2. So the 2 goes inside the parentheses, and then we raise that to the power of x. All right, now remember what this means is the f of 5 is we're looking for what is the y when you plug in 5. In other words, if the input is 5, what is the output? In other words, like basically it's the next number in the table. So when x equals 5, what number goes here? Well, basically it's going to be this number times 2, and that's going to be 96. Okay, so f of 5 equals 6, or 96. The other way to find that, because let's say that number is like 10, and I don't want to multiply, keep multiplying 2. I just want to do it in one step. I use the equation and I plug in the input. So you notice that the x is up here in the exponent, so that's where you put the 5. So I put the 5 right there. And now remember that this is 3 times 2 to the 5th power. This means we're going to do exponents first because we have to multiply these 2's out. Then remember, this is not 2 times 5. This is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So you're multiplying 2 5 times. Okay? Now the way you can set this up is use the calculator. So I'm just going to set this up, 3 parentheses 2. And then for the exponent, hit this button right here, that little caret or arrow button, hit that, and now you can do the 5. Okay, and there you go. There you get 96. Okay, all right. So that'll be kind of how we do the rest of these, so we don't have to sit there and multiply it out. All right, pattern here. Now we're going down. We're going the opposite direction. So we're dividing 2 this time. But if you guys remember what I told you the other day, is we're not going to write our equations with what are you dividing. We're going to write it with what are you multiplying. Okay, so if it's divide by 2, this also means we are multiplying by 1/2. You flip it. So if it's divide 2, you flip it and make it 1/2. Okay, so it's just like this one the other day where we were dividing by 2. I changed that to times 1/2. Okay. Okay. All right, so now the start is just wherever x equals 0, so that's 16. And then what type? Well, we're doing multiplication again, or division, so this is exponential. Equation f of x, okay, just like this one over here. We start with this, the start, then the pattern, which we're going to put the 1 over 2, not the 2, but the 1 over 2. And then what's the next number in the pattern? Well, I'm going to write this out. 6 times 1/2 raised to the 5th power. So remember, that is going to go there. So the way I'm going to type this out is I'm going to do 16 times. Now to do the fraction, I just hit the fraction button. 1 over 2. In parentheses, hit the exponent button to the 5th power, and you can see that it's 1/2. And if you think about it, it's just 1 divided by 2, which is 1/2. Okay. All right, so now this next one, the pattern. What are we doing here? You see how it's growing really fast. That's always the giveaway or the hint that that this is multiplication. All right, so we are multiplying. What would I multiply from times 2 to get 8? That would be 4. So times 4. Okay, where are we starting at? It's wherever x equals 0. Okay, so that is 2. What type? Again, if we're multiplying, these are just all exponentials. I'm going to fully spell it out this time. Okay, so now we get f of x. We start with the start, then the pattern, raised to the power of x. And now we're going to figure out what's the output, or what's the y, when x equals 5. So 2 times 4 to the 5th power. So remember, we're just plugging that 5 in there. Okay, I'm going to use my calculator here. 2 times 4 to the 5th power, 2,048. Okay. All right, now this one, the pattern, you can see it's going down. It's going down rapidly. It's not the same between 18 and 6 and 6 and 2. So this has to be an exponential again. Okay, so this would be, what would I divide into 6 to get to 2? Well, that'd be 3. So if it is divide by 3, I'm going to do it just like the one before and flip it. And now it's going to be 1 over 3. Multiply 1 over 3. Okay, let me get that. It's starting to fade. There we go. Okay, so we're multiplying by 1/3. Where are we starting? We're starting where x equals 0. That's 18. Okay, so now what's the type? It's going to be exponential again. F of x, for the equation, you start with whatever the start is, the first number, that's your a. So basically that first number is always the a for the exponentials. And then we're going to put the pattern, which is times 1 over 3, raised to the x. Okay, now let's figure this out. We're going to do 18. Now you can see it's not, the 5 is not the next number in the pattern here, because 5 is the input, and it would have to go 3, 4, 5. So we're just going to go ahead and plug this in. 18 times 1/3 raised to the 5th power. So we're just plugging in that. Now we got 18. I use the fraction button for that one. Oops. Times, or raised to the 5th power. Okay, so that's 2. It's going to equal 2 over 27. Okay. Okay, so now the next one. All right, what's the pattern here? All right, well, I noticed that it's consistent now. It's not rapidly decreasing, and it's the same between each number. The difference is the same. So this is actually going to be a linear pattern, okay, or arithmetic, and we're subtracting 2 this time. But the start is still the same. It's still wherever x equals 0. So we're going to have 30 there as the start. So this one is now a linear pattern. Okay, and now we're going to use mx plus b, okay, for our equation. So now f of x equals the m, which is the -2. I'm going to use some color this time. And then plus b, and remember your b is just your whatever you start with. So plus 30. All right, now to figure out the output for 5, we're going to just plug in the 5 here this time. So it's not in the exponents, it's in the variable right next to 2. So now we're plugging in the 5 here. So now this is just negative 2 times 5, which is negative 10. Negative 10 plus 30 is 20. Okay. All right, now these next three, notice that the table's not filled out. We're given the equation, so we kind of have to like work backwards. All right, so first thing is we got to figure out where we're starting each table. And remember that with the exponential, these are all exponential equations, by the way. Okay, the first number, the A, is your start, right? So like here, 18, that's the first number. 2, that's the first number. This exponential, 3 is the first number. So that means the first number that we start with here is 5. Okay, the 5 is our start. Okay, down here on this one, the first number is 60. On this one, the first number, wait, there is no first number. There's nothing in front. Okay, so this one's a little tricky because they didn't put a number in front. So if there isn't one, that's actually a 1. Okay, there's a 1 there. Okay, so this is what the equation would look like with that starting value. So we're actually starting this one at 1. Okay. All right, so now let's fill in the rest. Okay, so what's the pattern here on this one? The pattern is that second number, so times 2. What's the pattern down here? Times 1/4. Or if I flip that back, it's the same as dividing 4. So when I make the table, that might be a little bit easier to use to figure out the next number. Okay, this one, what's the pattern? Times 6. Okay, it's whatever that second number is. And then this one, the pattern was the 1. Okay, so now here, where are we starting at? Okay, let's just go ahead and fill that in. This is 5. This one's 60. This one, the start is at the 1. Okay, now these are all the same type of equation. These are all exponential. So exponential, exponential, exponential. All right, now we're just going to do that last step. Okay, well, first, actually, before we do this, let's do the table. Now, all of these we want to start at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Always start at 0 because that is where your y-intercept or your beginning is. All right, so now remember that the pattern is multiply by 2. So we're going to take this number and multiply 2. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 times 2 is 20. 20 times 2 is 40. Times 2 is 80. Times 2 is 160. We just keep multiplying 2, okay? This one, what's the pattern? It's multiply 1/4 or divide by 4. So we're divide by 4. And if you don't know, just get out a calculator. You can calculate this. And actually what I'm going to do is instead of dividing 4, I'm going to show you guys how to multiply the 1/4. Okay, so let's actually do the multiply 1/4. So times 1/4. You can see that's 15 because 60 divided by 4 is 15. Okay, then we're going to multiply that times the 1/4 again. Okay, we get 15/4. So now we're starting to get some fractions. And then once you do that twice, watch what happens. All I have to do is hit the enter button, and then it gives me the next one. 15/16. Hit it again. Okay, now we get 15/64. Hit it one more time. And now we get 15/256. Okay? All right, and what you're going to notice, there's a pattern there, by the way. If you look at the bottom number is starting to increase by multiplying 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. 64 times 4 is 256. So it does follow a pattern. Okay, so now we need to figure out the input when it's negative 1, or the output when the input is negative 1. So we're going to do 60 times 1/4 to the negative 1. All right, and do realize that negative 1 is just pretty much whatever comes before 0. So the one before that would basically be the opposite of dividing 4. We'd be multiplying 4, so 60 times 4 to get to that one. Okay, but I'm going to have to set this up in the calculator. 1/4, oops. And then we get raised to the negative 1, and we get 240. So equals 240. Okay, so hopefully you guys saw that. 60 times 1/4 to the negative 1, 240. Okay, all right, so now let's Go back to this one. We skipped this one on accident. And actually this one, remember that 5 is just the 5th number. So we don't have to calculate anything. It's right there. Okay, same thing on this one's going to be a -1, so we're going to have to plug that one in. Okay, now remember this one's times 6, so we're multiplying 6. 1 times 6 is 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Ooh, I'm starting to, I don't know what that is. All right, so we're going to 36 times 6, that's 216, times 6 again, that's 1296, times 6 again, that's 7,706, or 76. Okay. Some big numbers. All right, now I need to know what comes before 1. All right, so we're going to plug it in. So this is just going to be 6 to the -1, because that's the original equation. So we're just going to basically plug in the -1 right there. All right, and that's what we're doing again, is just plugging in that input there. Okay, so 6 to the -1, 6 to the power of -1, just like that. And watch that one more time. Hit that button right there. Okay, to get that -1, and it's 1/6. Okay. All right, flip your page. Let's go to the back. We got a couple more here at the top. All right, so this is kind of the same one. We're starting with an equation this time, except notice this is not the multiplying one. This is our linear. Okay, so that is your pattern. So remember that first number is your pattern in the linear. So this is actually just subtract 2. We're going to start with 3, our linear pattern. So that means 3 will go here. And we always start with 0 and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and now we're just subtracting 2. Now it's just -2, it's 1, -2, -1, -2, -3, -5, -7. Now, if I want to get the output for -1, well, that's just going backwards. So if I'm going down, if I'm going this way by subtracting 3, I go up, back up to get to by adding 2. So it'd be 5. So f of -1 equals 5. Okay, or just plug it in. -2 times -1 is 2, plus 3, 5. All right, last one here. Okay, so this one, remember that the pattern, it seems to be the same distance between each number. So that means it's going to be a linear pattern. And then we're adding 3 this time. Okay, it's plus 3. And then we're starting, remember the start is wherever x equals 0. So actually it's here at -1 this time. So we got to always be careful. Always look for where x equals 0. Okay, and then the type here, since we're adding, is linear. We're going to do just like this one over here, except we're going to use f of x. Okay, so now we're going to do 3x minus 1. Okay, that's just, remember, this is just mx plus b. All right, the m was the 3, we put the x, and then the b was the -1. Okay, so now we got to plug in the 5, so we're going to go ahead and use the equation this time. So 3 times 5 minus 1. 3 times 5 is 15, minus 1, that is 14. I don't need the calculator for that. Okay, you guys' homework, okay, is going to be this. So finish the rest of this page and work on test corrections. All right.